Welcome to the Business Spotlight podcast. My name is Kay Cote, and I'm your host for today's episode. And today on the show, we have Sam Curtis, CEO of Element 8, as my guest. We're going to be learning about his business, his journey to business ownership, best practices he's learned along the way, and challenges that he's faced to give you that inside look to what it's like to own and operate a business. Welcome, Sam. So great to meet you. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. It's great to meet you as well.
Thank you. Well, before we dive into all things business, I'd love to share a bit about you with our audience. So take us back as far as you want and just feel free to share about yourself.
Sure. I started my career in telecommunications in 1990. I worked for my dad. He was a professional engineer and primarily worked for Southwestern Bell and provided engineering and business consulting for, independent telephone companies. He started a company called ACRS. I went to work for him right out of college, got my degree in engineering physics and got my license. I'm a professional engineer and worked in a consulting kind of arrangement for independent telephone companies throughout the nation, primarily Native American telecommunication providers like Gila River, Fort Mojave, and some small independent telephone companies throughout the country and did that for a long period of time, ran engineering and construction, built fiber networks, wireless networks throughout the country. And then in 2004, my mother-in-law had multiple sclerosis, and he was working from home in 2004 to take care of her, and he had what was called then an ISDN line, which was very slow internet connection, but he was paying $150 a month. And so I had the bright idea. I said, look, I can get a T1, which is about 1400 or 1.4 meg. Back in the day, that was really fast, and hook it up. He lived on a golf course, and I hooked it up to the main golf center there and put an antenna on that, and then hooked up him and his neighbors with high-speed internet. And two of my clients, which were independent telephone companies, liked that and said, Sam, can you do that on a larger scale? And so I formed AtLink in 2005 and just took all of my telecommunications design experience and designed a fairly robust wireless network just using the same technology you use in your house, for Wi-Fi. And but I put it on towers surrounding metropolitan Oklahoma City, and we served the underserved and unserved uh, customers there in the outskirts of Oklahoma City, suburban areas of Oklahoma City, with at that time high-speed internet, and really grew it to about 17,000 subscribers. And left the engineering. I still have an engineering consulting business, but focused primarily on building AtLink and operating internet service provider, and grew that to about 17,000 subscribers. And we actually built about 50 towers with grant money from the USDA, and expanded into more rural parts of Oklahoma, and sold AtLink in June of this year, closed on that transaction, and to a company by the name of Element 8. And I'm sorry, June of last year, um, closed on that. And since then, I've been asked to be the CEO of Element 8, the purchasing company. We're backed by private equity out of San Francisco. Digital Alpha Investment is the name of our private equity firm, and they buy companies like AtLink. We have an interest in another internet service provider, Whisper, out of Missouri, large, what we call wireless internet service provider, or WISP.
Mhm.
And we're just growing and trying to add value, add customers, and close tickets is really our mission statement. So that's kind of my
Wow.
background.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. I think I mean, it's something we all need, but we don't really think about a lot is our internet is like, unless it's out, then we're really thinking about it. But
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this is very cool. So Element 8, let's talk about your team. I'd love to get into your team about especially with Element 8. Now, you mentioned well yourself as CEO. Do you have a like a executive team that you currently have as well with that?
Yeah, my kind of right hand person is a guy by the name of Pat Castleberry. He is a former attorney. He calls himself a recovering lawyer. He is the president now of AtLink, and he runs all the operations. And I've known him since 1991. And he was actually our attorney, my dad's attorney. And when I started AtLink, he continued to consult with me. In fact, he helped me with legal structure and building that up and reporting to the board for years. And in about 2015, he came on full time. He sold his business at the time, and I coerced him into coming on full time. And so he's been critical, I guess, in any success that I've had. And I have another colleague, Raj Varapan, who had gone to work for me in 2005. He's a engineer and he's the chief technical officer for AtLink E8 now. And those are the key senior management folks that I have now. In the acquisition, I inherited some other senior management folks. Mike Fields is the general manager of our Texas operations. He's wonderful. And Jonathan Van is our business development expert. Yeah, he's out of Fort Worth as well. So
Oh, wow. Okay, that's incredible. I love to hear that you have a team. And, looking at your employees now, how many employees does Element 8 have?
collectively, through our Texas and Oklahoma operations, we're just at about 100
Oh,
employees.
wonderful. Okay, wonderful. And now I'd like to dive into a little bit about your role specifically. Take me through kind of a day to day for you. I'm sure it looks different somewhat day to day, but are you primarily working in the business or on the business? And what does that look like?
That's a good question. I've actually never have been an employee. I've always worked, well, I worked for my dad for years and then started my own business after that. So I've always had to create opportunity, either working for my dad that was put on me or working for myself. So my role has been a transition from working in the business to on the business over the years as I collect, talented people around me, smarter people than myself. It's allowed me to work more on the business, and it's allowed me to provide somewhat of a navigation or a direction for the company overall. And that's where I see my role is kind of finding a direction for the company and keeping it on that path as much as possible and trying to look 2 to 3 years down the road as much as possible. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can lean on mistakes I've made, experiences I've had, and try to predict what I can, and then position Element 8 and NatLink so that we can capitalize on opportunities in our industry. I mean, that's what I have seen our industry's ups and downs, and their history does tend to rhyme, so that's been helpful. I'm getting older, I guess, and wiser as I get older, so learning.
Mm. I like what you said there, that history rhymes. It's like not always identical, but we see patterns and things that come up. That's a kind of a golden nugget, I think, for anybody in business or, business ownership is to kind of keep an eye on those things. I think that's really important. And thank you for sharing that. That's a
Oh, you're
wisdom
welcome.
nugget.
Thanks. Some
Uh,
painful lessons, so
very much. So looking at um, let's take a look at your clients, like especially you're acquiring. How are you marketing your company to your clients?
Internet, since the COVID hit, it became more and more apparent where we have situations like this where you're using video teleconferencing and things of that nature become more and more a necessity, which requires true high-speed internet because we're uploading data as much as we're downloading data. So, that's it, the symmetrical aspect of data. It's always been how fast can you get downloaded data. Now it seems to be more reliant on an upload as well as a download. So we're kind of creating content all the time and uploading it to the internet.
Hmm.
Um, so what COVID really did kind of shine a light on the problem that we had in the country where we didn't really have symmetrical data. We had kind of older copper DSL where, the downloads were faster than the uploads, and it just didn't lend itself to a good experience for things like Zoom and teleconferencing.
Hmm.
So the nation, United States government, started creating grant programs to help infrastructure, build out the broadband infrastructure. So we've tapped into that as much as possible, participated in those grant programs. But how do I market to my customers? The nice thing about what I provide is it's almost a utility. You pay
Hmm.
your power bill and probably your internet bill just right after that. It's become more and more important as a utility for consumers. So, but how do I let them know? The hardest part is how do I let them know that I'm an alternative to the other providers that have a larger name, companies like AT&T, Comcast, Cox. They're kind of well known. So brand recognition, we spend some marketing dollars on brand recognition, but we haven't, the best marketing that we have found has been direct mail marketing, believe it or not. And the best sales results have been door to door, just boots in the ground, knocking on doors and customer referrals. So
Oh, wow. That's really cool that you said that too, because that's more of a rarity that I hear. So, but I could see that honestly working. I've gotten, my own like internet mailers and things too that I've received, and I'm always kind of looking at them to see if there's like comparable rates and things like that. So, thank you for sharing about that. And now I kind of want to look at let's take a look at the future of the company. Where do you see Element 8 growing to, and then the companies that are within it? Say the next 3 to 5 years. What are your company goals?
that's a good question. I think, what my focus has been right now is building a strong, operationally strong business that I always use the analogy lemonade stand. We make money the old-fashioned way. We invoice more than we spend at the end of the day. And right now, the environment is kind of a capital intensive environment. There's a lot of, I think there's $40 billion in grant dollars coming out of the United States government through the NTIA and USDA. And a lot of folks are focused on infrastructure and acquiring that capital and building the networks. And so there's plenty of that going around, but one of the things that I'm really focused on is not only the infrastructure aspect of it, but building a solid, operationally sound business where people use the term customer focused a lot, but I want you to be able to call Eliminate or AtLink or any of our companies and speak to someone within 60 seconds, a human being, and actually, if you have a problem, we address that problem. That's the front line to our customers. We don't contract out our installs. We have, W-2 employees that go do the install. They wear a uniform. First impressions are very important, but at the end of the day, it's customer service, it's local presence there as much as possible. And that tends to be more valuable than just a cheaper price at the end of the day. And so I want to avoid uh, what I call ARPU compression or average revenue per user compression, price compression, just, the race to bottom, race to zero. I want to provide more value such that whenever you do select AtLink or Element 8 as your internet service provider, you're not so overly concerned about the monthly bill as you are appreciative of the fact that you have someone who cares and is working with you, and that you don't have to deal with internet problems. So
Yeah, the spa service. I always call that the spa service. You want to provide that service that really elevates and brings the best to the table.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the larger companies have employed things like AI, and which are useful tools, but there's nothing that can replace the human interaction, and just, it's somewhat frustrating, at least for me, to call up a larger company that's providing me internet and have to go through a litany of call tree, questions that are robotic in nature. And I just want to speak to a human. I just want, at least just to gripe. Here's my problem, it's this real interaction. And we really have invested, and we have a pretty large call center, and we focus on that aspect for our customer. So
Definitely. And one thing I like to touch on is the challenges that business owners and entrepreneurial folks are having. And this actually brings a great question to ask would be, how are you like, are there challenges that are like or hurdles you're facing to make that happen, especially in a day and age where it's more about AI, it's more about automated and like less people, less hands on deck when you're trying to kind of do the opposite.
yeah, there's always the pressure to focus on bottom line, and I don't want to ever lose sight of what EBITDA or cash flow. That's the goal, to make money. And oftentimes, the most expensive aspect of anyone's income statement is labor. And so there's always that tendency to sacrifice labor for automation, to try to reduce that, to increase the bottom line. And that is a pressure that I have, and there is value to that. And there's always ways to improve and find efficiencies. But I never want to sacrifice that human interaction, that element that I think provides ultimate value, long-term customer loyalty. Uh, you know, to me, that is a temptation and a problem that I think companies find, at least I've experienced, whenever you over automate, you lose some of the real value that you originally provided, and you just can't replace people. I think we're a very people-focused, customer-focused company, but we're always looking for automation. I definitely use AI. I think AI is a wonderful tool, but I think it's like a calculator. It doesn't replace you. As an engineer, I still have to understand the formulas and the theory behind it. I can't just constantly plug it in and just expect an answer. It's garbage in, garbage out. So,
That's true. That's a good point. So looking at, creating that experience of, working with real life people and people focused, what are some of the strategies you put in place to help offset some of those additional costs?
well, my experience has been to invest in the person, and really not just financially, but on a human level. I create a culture. I try to always create a culture where I take the organizational chart and flip it upside down. I look to try to serve my employees as much as they serve me. And what I've found, and it's a unique approach, because it's not, typically when you hear CEO or business, it's kind of a draconian type approach to managing people. I don't do that. And my experience, luckily, has been, and it's been a challenge, because I treat people with respect and give them encouragement and acknowledge their wins, not just financially, but publicly within the company. And what I've found is that there's times when I'm just down. I'm not always up. I can't always be on, and they pull me. In the past, my employees have pulled me, have gotten me through difficult times, and I'm not having to push them as much. And that's invaluable to me. And that's why I'm so focused on team building and really finding the right people and creating a culture of success within the company. I give an example. Early in my career, I had to build a fiber optic line over a very difficult terrain in southeast Oklahoma over a mountain called Bengal Mountain. And I couldn't pay the guys enough money to make the sacrifices that they had to make to get that line over that mountain. It was the
Mm.
accomplishment, the aspect, the experience, and at the end of the day, the most valuable thing was a T-shirt with all their names on it that said, "I survived Bengal Mountain." The accomplishment was a value that you just couldn't put a price on, and it just created a great um, culture within our company at that time, and I had those guys work for me for years beyond that, and became friends. So.
I love that. Like that's really important, and it just shares like that is true. The human component, the person, behind the computer that is maybe having a tough day, who just needs like that care from their team. I think that's another golden nugget of this conversation for folks. So this has been such a great conversation so far. I'm very excited for everything that you're growing and for sharing your wisdom nuggets. So kind of moving into the next part of the Q&A, it's we're going to be going through some rapid fire questions where I'm going to ask you 4 questions and just answer very top of mind.
Sure.
All right. Question number 1 is, what is a key to success for you?
Authenticity at the end of the day, truly being authentic and truthful, and bearing the fruits of that are immeasurable. So success is not always, measured in a financial aspect. I think it's in building that reputation, that authentic reputation, and being remembered for that.
That's a great one. Number 2 is, what is a piece of advice you have for business owners?
That's a really good question. Listen to find the right people, invest in people. And if you are the smartest person in the room, it's not a very good situation. I strive to not be the smartest person in the room. Build a team around you that continues to surprise and impress you, and you'll yield benefits over time doing that. So
That's a great one for sure. Number 3 is, it could be a book, a podcast, an article, just anything that's resonated with you recently.
right now I'm reading a book, Unlocking Creativity, by Michael Beinhorn.
Oh.
It's well, you probably can't see that, but I'm a frustrated musician. I studied music in college along with engineering, and I love music production, and he's a music producer, and I like the creative aspect of what I do and try to harness that as much as possible. So
I just wrote that one down. That's going to be my next one for sure. And the fourth question is, if you could wave a magic wand and overnight improve one element of your business, what would it be?
I would upgrade my entire network to the latest fixed wireless equipment out there called Tarana is the name of the equipment. It's a capital intensive business, and you ask for a magic wand, that's what I would do. That way I could provide better service to my customers. So
I like that. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. Before we get to our final question of the day, Sam, how can people get connected with you and your company online?
the website is atlink.net, atlink.net. That's the operating business. I have an engineering firm, stsllc.org, and you can get in contact with me that way as well. So,
All right. Thank you so much. And for our final question today, what is most inspiring to you today?
music.
Love that. Me too. Me too. Well, Sam, oh my gosh, thank you for your time today. Thanks for being on the show and for sharing about your business with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.